Pickyourtrail, and today I'm here on a webinar with GUVI to teach how to build mobile applications quickly with React Native to you guys. So let's get started. So I guess many of you already know what React Native is as a platform. Before we go into React Native, I like to share a few things about myself. So for people who don't know me, so I am working with Pickyourtrail. Pickyourtrail is actually a travel-based startup. We plan international vacations, and I also work with JavaScript and the React ecosystem. So if you look at it, React is basically a framework for building user interfaces. When it started as a small framework, but now it has a huge ecosystem surrounding it. So we have like uh, full static site generators like Gatsby, Next.js, and we have mobile application development frameworks like React Native. So yeah, we have quite a bit of uh, ecosystem that is built around React, and I am working with Pickyourtrail to build their mobile app and some part of their web app. So I work with both React.js and React Native, and I'm currently focusing on React Native for the past 2 years. And I really like building applications. And I also write a lot about how my work progresses and how things go to the developer community. So I have written a book on 2017 called JavaScript by Example. And now I'm actually contributing to the actual React Native docs. So next version of React Native 0.62 will publish a new documentation with updated APIs. So I actually worked on some of the new APIs, such as the animated pan responder and many such documentation. So you can find my examples in the next version of documents. Now, why React Native? So this is one of the important things we always discuss whenever we are building something new with tech. Building things once should be enough because technically we are just solving a simple problem. Most of the time, the apps that we build, the people, the audience that we target, for them, we just have to build a good experience. And for building that good experience, you don't have to build everything multiple times. So right now, if we are not using React Native, what happens is we'll be spending so much time and effort on building an Android app. Then once the Android app reaches well with the people, we'll be spending more amount of time rebuilding the entire app on iOS. So to avoid that, React Native actually became a really good platform. And now React Native is even improving a lot. It now supports 3 platforms. So React Native can build Android and iOS apps. And now it is also grown well that it also supports web as a platform, which means with React Native, you just have to build your application once and it will run on web, Android, and iOS, all 3 platforms with the same code base. Now, going back, so this is basically the kind of app that we are going to build in this webinar so that I can show you how React Native works and how you can actually build cross-platform UI with this. Before we start, here are a few things that we need. So starting with the basics, we will be using React.js. So React.js is a JavaScript library. When it was created, Facebook only focused on building some rich user interfaces with React. So React.js comes with a set of prerequisites. So if you want to get started with React Native, you actually need to go through a roadmap. You have to be really good with JavaScript, and you have to be good with ES6 because most of the React syntax is written in ES6. And React also has this XML style markup language called JSX. So how it works is we write JavaScript code and we return the values in the form of JSX syntax. So JSX syntax looks something like this. So you can see it looks like HTML, but technically it's not directly HTML. It has little difference. So you can see I am having view, text, and some attributes. I'll explain how this JSX works shortly. So this is from React's official documentation. So you can see they have quite a bit of roadmap for different levels of people who actually want to learn React. So they have React for designers, they have JavaScript resources, and also we have some examples which they have built using the code. Oh, just a second, I'm getting some chat messages. Cool. Then moving on to React Native. So right now, the framework that we looked at, React.js, is primarily, when it was created, was primarily targeting web. So what Facebook did was they split React into two components. One is React, which actually contained the uh, utilities and libraries for rendering the virtual, constructing the virtual DOM. And they built another module. They split the another module out called React DOM, React Document Object Model. So what React DOM does is React will construct the virtual DOM, and React DOM will take care of rendering the virtual DOM on the browser. So now React JS runs on the web browser using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. But then, since React Virtual DOM is separate from the React DOM library, they improved that. They built another module on top of it called React Native. So what React Native does is, when you are building an Android app or an iOS app, you will be writing UI in some syntax. For example, in Android, you will be using XMLs, responsive XMLs to define the UI, and in iOS, you will be using table layout, or you will be using Swift UI in the modern development to define the user interface of the project. But Facebook has this project called Yoga. It's a cross-platform tool. It's a cross-platform layout engine that can build UI across both Android and iOS. So this is a really interesting project. And with this, you can actually write UI in Yoga, and it will automatically render the same UI for both Android and iOS. Then they took Yoga and they added it to the previously discussed React Virtual DOM. So what happened is, when you write code on React, and React will interface itself with the native side through Yoga, and it will take care of rendering the UI elements on the screen, which means you write your code only on JSX, and JavaScript will pass the commands to the native side of the app. And in the native side of the app, it will display the UI using pure native components. Now, this is one of the biggest advantage of React Native, because when you are using HTML, CSS to build cross-platform web apps, the feel will not be that native. What users will feel is they will have a really poor experience, because it will be like browsing an entire website in their mobile app. So the solutions like Ionic, Apache Cordova, so they are all focusing on displaying the app as a web view. But React Native, however, uses real native components, which means you build your app with React Native, and the users will see no difference between a native app and a hybrid app like the one that we are going to build. Now, React Native obviously requires you to have a good understanding of React, and it also needs some tools that need to be installed. So right now there are two paths you can choose to get React Native running. So one is Expose CLI, another thing is React Native CLI. So these two have their advantages and disadvantages. So let me explain what Expose CLI is. So Expose CLI is basically another framework that is built on top of React Native. So React.js is the underlying library. React Native is a framework that is built on top of React.js. And Expo is actually another entirely different player. This is their actual site, expo.io. Yeah, I can click on get started. So they actually, their goal is they wanted to make React Native simple for everyone to get started with. So they set up a single command line utility called the Expose CLI. So you actually need Node.js installed on your system so that you will have access to the npm package manager. And once you have npm package manager, you just have to run npm install -t expo CLI. Then you run expo init, your project name, you move into the project and run npm start. That will actually launch the expo CLI and immediately get you up and running with your actual app. This kind of expo CLI path is really easy to get started with. However, it has one major disadvantage in that to make this entire setup simple, what expo CLI did is they already built all the required native components and they packaged it together. So now you might be wondering what those native components are. So React.js was built as a UI library, which means it focuses on displaying UI. However, when you are building a React native app, UI is one part of the app, but you also need some native functionalities, like you need to access the camera, you need to access geolocation, you need to access some other additional native elements that will be used by your respective users. So React Native doesn't come with all those native elements inbuilt. It comes with separate packages for each of those native elements. However, Expo CLI, to make the installation process simple for you, they already packaged all those native elements into their CLI library. So what happens now is, even if your app is pretty basic, even if it's a small app, the resulting app size will be large. So that is one small disadvantage if you are going with the Expo CLI part. However, you can always switch over to the React Native CLI part. Now this one is pretty complicated because here you actually have to set up all the mobile development environments. So in Mac OS, if you want to have iOS and Android setup running, you actually need to install iOS developer tools. You have to install Xcode, CocoaPods, and command line tool for React Native, and some more steps. And in Android, you have to go through entire Android Studio setup path. So this is pretty complex. For starters, if you just want to run a small app for learning purposes, it is actually a overkill. But if you are actually doing some large project for organizations and you want to optimize the app size, you want full control of the native elements, then I'd recommend you go with React Native CLI path for those projects. But in our case, Expo CLI path is pretty much enough, because what we are going to do is completely for learning purpose. And the thing I like about Expo is that they gave us an amazing tool to quickly get up and running with React Native. And along with that, they also built a nice JS Fiddle-like user interface for testing our React project. Just a second. Yeah. Now I'll open a new tab and go to a site called snack.expo.io. Now here, just a second. Yeah, sorry, I think the screen went blank for a while. So this, the site's still loading. So this is an online React Native playground, just like what we have for JS Fiddle, CodePen. So they are all playgrounds for writing web applications. But snack.expo.io is actually a playground for building real native applications, because Expo has built a really nice ecosystem to quickly run React Native. They built an online playground, and on the right side you can see live preview. And at the start I said React Native supports 3 platforms now. So one is iOS, Android, and third one is web. And for running Android and iOS, Expo does provide us a simulator. However, when I try to open that, I might experience some lag, because this is a real device that is running in different part of the world. So yeah, the interface is pretty laggy. I can see you guys can probably experience this also. So I'll stick with the web. So this code on my left side is basically rendering the corresponding UI on all these environments. Just a second, the web actually went blank. Let me refresh the page once. Yeah. So this is the code. Now I'll explain how to quickly build simple UI using this playground. After that, we'll download this code that we are building and run it on our local system. So for starters, I'll just remove all the existing code that's available here. It needs much of this. Of constants, I'll say 20. Yep. Now this is how a React native app looks like, and this is the classic class component style. I'll also remove this so that I can explain how you can start with a bare bones app. So usually Expo app has this entry file on. Let me zoom in a bit. On my left side, there is an app.js file. So this is where we start writing our code. So in our app.js file, the first import statement is importing the actual React library. Then we import some of the Vue components from React Native. So React contains the logic to render these components, and the corresponding components are all imported from React Native module. Then I create a function, const app. Now this is a function, and I'll be exporting this function. Now, whatever function we export here becomes the root of our actual web component. Actual React component. This is the root for our entire project. Now I can return a simple text. So this is how you write JSX. It is similar to HTML. However, unlike HTML, we don't have the well-known p tags, h1 tags, and those tags are all completely unavailable. Instead, React Native has replaced them with these primitives. Primitives in the sense, if you want to display text, there is a text element. Then you can stylize this text element using the style attribute. So I can do style, and I can give some interesting things like font size. I can give font size of 14 and font weight of bold. So this syntax now it's getting a little weird. Just saying, I'll save the project. I'll name it as up and running webinar. Yep, sorry. Okay, I'll save this project. Now pay a little attention here, how this JSX component looks like. I'll also do a little formatting here. So this is now my text component, the text tag, and style is my attribute. Now JSX, the full form is JavaScript inside XML. So this syntax is pretty much similar to XML, and I am writing actual JavaScript object inside the attribute. So inside style, when I click, just a second, what's that message? Yeah, for learning. So yes, we will be using Snack. After that, I'll explain how to get this running in local. So we have a text attribute, text element with style attribute. Then we have an entire JavaScript object here. And this JavaScript object contains the font weight. And this is similar to how CSS style sheets look. Except in CSS style sheets, you will be writing font size as font-size. And this will be 14 px. Instead of writing it that way, React Native has JavaScript style camel cases. And instead of pixels, it directly accepts values as number. And React Native also has inbuilt pixel ratio logic so that it can upscale the font size based on the device your users are using. So this is how you define a basic style. And defining objects directly inside XML is also not very efficient. So to avoid, so add some efficiency, React Native comes with this component called style sheet. So let me const styles equals style sheet dot create. Now here I'll create an object using the style sheet dot create method. I'll say text, and I'll move this entire styles into the style sheet component. Then I can directly say styles dot text. So now we have the style applied to the corresponding text element here. Now this text element is basically a primitive, which means if you want h1 or if you want p tag or any other specific text component that follows your UI design, then you can extend this text component to build that element. This way, you are not limited by the number of options you have. The possibilities are practically endless. Now, this is the actual project that I wanted to build to explain React Native to you guys. So this is basically a to-do app where you can create and mark some to-dos as complete. So to start with our to-do app, let's start with a common input field. So this is a normal text field. I'll change that text field into something like my to-do app. Yes. And yeah, I cannot directly return multiple adjacent elements without wrapping them inside a fragment. So this is called a fragment. This is used to wrap adjacent elements if there is any going to be present in our component. So next thing I need is a text input. So text input is also another primitive which lets you create some text input, just like input type text, similar to input field on the web. So let me create a text input here. And I'll give it a value saying new to do. So now I have a text input. However, I am not able to edit any values in this to do because in React, the state of controlled components are controlled directly. When I mention the value directly to the text input, it becomes a controlled component. And if I want to change this value, I cannot do it directly. I have to make a change to the state. Now, we are going to learn about another important concept. This one is from React. So React has this concept called hooks. So here I'll say use state. Whenever we are working with React hooks, the name usually starts with use. This is a convention we are following to easily identify functions which are all hooks. So use state is a hook that lets you define the application state. So this is how you use an use state hook. So use state, I'm saying by default, the state is going to be an empty string, and I'll have to destructure this into input value and set input value. So now I got two special constants from the use state hook. What they do is input value will contain the current state, and set input value contains a method, a dispatch action that can update the input value. So now I'll change the value here and I'll set it to input value. Now my text input field has an attribute called value, and its value is directly the input value state. Then, which means the text input is currently empty. I'll also give it a placeholder here. I'll say add new to do. Yes, now it has a placeholder. Now, whenever I change some value here, I need to update this input value state. And that value supposed to be the value I am typing into that input field. To do that, can have on change text method. So on change text method is basically a callback that fires a function with the value that I am typing in as its input. Sorry, I'll say input, and I'll set input value with the value of my input. Now when I go back and I start typing, you can see it's now following my inputs. So the whole concept of React is you render the UI using JSX, and you control the values that are displayed in the JSX using states. So this is a state hook, and with this state hook, can basically control how the values are being displayed for an input field. And if I want to change this displayed value, I need to add an input. I need to type some values in. I need to have a callback function, and this function will take care of updating my input state. Then we also have other hooks like use effect, use callback. So these are all hooks that are created to handle side effects. Side effects are basically asynchronous actions that are happening in your app, and I am not pretty much focusing on those hooks yet. So let's continue with building our app so that we can learn some of them on the way. Going back to my components, I don't really need this file. I can delete that. Now, in our to-do list sample app, we have a header and a footer and an view here that contains the to-dos list. So I need to build a layout like that one. And for building such layout, React Native comes with a really good implementation of flex boxes. So it was introduced in CSS3 and it's widely used on the web. And if you know Flexbox, you can also build really responsive layouts directly in the mobile app. I'm going back to components. I'll create a new file. I'll call it header.js, and one new file called footer.js, and another one, let's say I'll call it todo.js. Yes. So the advantage of having this JSX syntax in our React Native project is that we can write this JSX in small functions. We can split up the entire JSX components into small functions and have those functions render those specific elements. So right now, in the sample app, I have three sections. I have the header, I have the footer, and I also have a view that displays all the to-dos, which means I can split all of them into their respective components and then have them being displayed here as one whole component. So right now, this is going to be my header. So going into my header app, I'll start with import React, and I'll add another import statement for React Native. I'll import three items: view, text, and style sheet. These three are enough. Let me create the header component. Now I am having my view component. I'll bring the text from the app.js. Yes, yeah, it's saying styles are missing. No issues. We'll create the styles. Another big advantage of having React Native is that it automatically scopes the styles that you use for your component within that component. This gives us a really nice functionality which we used with styled components. So people working on the React.js web will be often working with styled components for scoping the styles within the components. If we use React Native, this functionality just comes inbuilt since we are writing styles with JavaScript anyway. So I got style sheet.create and I got my text component here. Now this header is now an independent component that can be rendered within our app.js component. How I can do that is I have exported the header function. Now in my app.js file, I can do import header from components header.js. Then I can simply say header. I'll import render header as a tag here. Now you can see my header is being displayed here. Also, I can give a background color. Let me give gray and add some padding. Not exactly. What I can, however, do is I'll give a style to my view. I'll call it container. And I'll give it a height 40. Now, this is from Flexbox. I can say align items to center and justify content to center. And it will automatically center align my title. You can see the title is aligned center. And I can also give it some background color. I'll give it gray. And the background color has been applied to my component. Next, I can actually go and create the footer following the same principle. But let's hold on for a moment because I have to explain how the entire app layout works. So right now I have a header which already occupies 40 pixels from the top of my mobile apps view. Then I can wrap the entire view component. Why did this open up all of a sudden? And it's also missing the I don't know. I'll just leave it there. I don't know why this window opened up. It's now disturbing me. Currently, I see no way on how to close this window because usually it has a maximize, minimize buttons on top. Let me see if there is anything available on. So, nope. Guess we'll just leave it that. It's now occupying space on the screen. Okay, let's live with it. I'll just move it here when I am typing the code. Okay, it's gone. Thank you, whoever it is. Now I can focus on creating my actual view. So I'll name it another container. Remember, this container is now within the scope of the app component. So in this container, by default, I'll say background color yellow. Thank you. Okay, now this view currently occupies only the area that's covered by our text input. However, I want this to occupy the entire screen portion of my app. So what I'll do is I'll give it a flex of 1. Now, since it has a flex of 1, it basically instructs the view to expand and occupy the entire available view of the screen. Sorry about that. All of a sudden, I had my power adapter disconnect. So, okay. Now, where were we? Yeah, I was applying Flex 1 to my entire mobile app, which actually made the entire view expand to cover the entire section of the screen. Then I can remove this yellow color now. If I create a footer component now, since this view already occupies the entire screen, the footer will automatically be pushed to the end of the screen. So now let me create a footer. I'll do the import statements first. Or better, I'll copy the import statements from the header component. Now I'll return a view. And the text that says footer. Now this is my footer component. Let me render this footer component in my app.js. Import footer from, and I'll render it after this view. You can see the footer basically appeared at the bottom because our container currently occupies the maximum possible view it can, because we have given it a flex 1. And you can see it occupies all the way until the footer. I can also give footer container some style. I'll give this container the same style I gave for the header. I'll remove the text style. Yeah, now we have a footer. And yeah, we also have an input box here. Now below this input box, basically you are now typing a new to do. So I can click here and say new to do. And now I need a way to add this to do. Basically I need an add button. And React Native has a primitive for buttons. So it has a button component. I can have that button here. And it has a title property that says add, and an on press property which invokes a function when it is clicked. Let's say I don't do anything for now. So I have an add button here. And yeah, this button by default comes with this kind of view. But it would be nice if this button actually is next to the add new to do input field. So what I can do is I can wrap this both inside another view. Yes. What's this? Okay. I'm getting that audio is not clear. Just a second. Let me see if I can. Uh, okay. I tried increasing the volume option available in the microphone, but I guess it should be clear now. Okay, thanks. Now I need to align this add button to the right of my input field. So what I can call this is, I'll call it uh, style start input wrapper. Basically, it's a view that wraps the input fields. And in the input wrapper, I'll give it a flex direction. I'll say flex direction row, which means now it acts as a row. So that instead of one below another, they are aligned one after another. Then I'll create a style for my input field. And I'll give flex1 to the input field. So now what happens is this input field occupies the maximum space, and this button is basically pushed to the end of the field. Now this looks like a nice input option. Cool. Now we basically need to add to-dos now. So to add to-dos, first we need to build a state that can store these to-dos. So I already have a state created previously. So I can bring that state over here. Let me get that. So this is how the state for my to-dos is going to look like. It's the same. I have the use state hook that contains a default value of an array of objects, and the state will be stored in to-dos. And this is the dispatch function that can update the to-dos state. So the state basically contains a task, which is the task that I am supposed to do, and if it's completed or not. And when I basically click on the checkbox, it's going to set completed value to true or false. Cool. Now we need a to-do component that we can use to render all the states of my tasks. Basically, all the tasks need to be populated in this area. So this is my to-do component. Let me start with importing React. So I got React and React Native. Cool. I need to view text and style sheet. So this is my to-do component. Now what this component is going to do is, it is going to receive this value task and completed status and display a corresponding option with checkbox. Just like this, we have a text component with a checkbox, and whenever I click on this checkbox, it is going to display or remove that dash strike through line. So going back, basically now, so far the functions that we built accepted no inputs. There are no arguments. However, this to-do component is going to accept arguments, and these arguments are going to be supplied in form of attributes, which means they'll come here as objects, and will destructure the objects directly in the function. So the arguments that we will need is, the bar is back. Anyway, it's beyond my control. Only the admin can change it. Let me ask. Coming back, this is our to-do component. So it basically accepts a bunch of functions. So first function I'm going to give it is first object that I'm going to give it is task and completed status. Then there is a checkbox component in React Native, which I'll add here. Yes, that should do. Then I'll bring the styles that I previously created into this component. So first thing is I need a wrapper, a view component. I'll call it to-do wrapper. Next up, I need a checkbox. Yes. And value is completed status. Then I need a text field. So here, this is the important part, because for text, I have two set of styles. One is task text. Another thing is completed text. Can I move this bar here? Yeah. Now, let me add the text component. And inside this text component, I'm going to display the task, the variable that I have destructured here. So what I will do is I'll put it inside the flower brackets. That way, it will treat whatever present inside as a JavaScript variable. Now for my text style, I'll give task text styles dot task text. Now I have a to-do component ready. This to-do component can be now rendered in my app.js. I'll place it here. To do. So this is my to-do component, and I'll say is completed false task test. It basically renders the to-do. However, I am unable to click on that because I haven't set any states for the to-do component, and I also haven't populated the value with this array. So this is the most important part. Let me show you how to loop over the to-dos. So this to-dos is basically an array of items, and here I can put these flower brackets, and inside the flower brackets, whatever I type will be treated as actual JavaScript code, which means I can put in variables and expressions. Now, to-dos dot map is basically an expression. It's an array map, and here I can get a to-do object as its argument, and I can return the to-do component directly. And also, whenever I'm looping through items, I need a unique value, basically map as second argument called index. I'll set that index as my unique value for the key attribute. So now I have the task. I can say to-do object dot is completed. Basically, I'm giving the values directly and getting the values directly from the states. I'll also destructure this a bit. Yep, that should do it. So I got my to-do component here. And the task is basically to-do object dot task. Basically, to-do object is every individual element that is present in. So now we have buy grocery, washing car, cooking dinner. We got all the three tasks. And if I set any of them to false, they will basically automatically turn into false. And if I want to add a new task, I just have to push a new element into this array. So let's implement the toggle functionality. To do the toggle, it's basically a simple function. Let's say toggle task. It is a function that is actually going to get index. For simplicity, I'll call the argument as task index. So the functionality of this is, if I give index as 0, it will change the value of is completed to false. If the value is false, it will change it to true. New to do state equals, I get the current to dos and I'll map over them with the to do object and the index. Now whatever I return here will become a new state object. So I'll say if task index matches the index of the current to do, return to do object with to do object is completed as to do object dot is completed. Whatever it is, toggle that value here. Else just return the to do object. So here I'm basically using some of the new JavaScript language syntax like the spread operator. They are pretty easy to pick up. Just Google for spread operator. You will easily understand what this operator actually does. I'm basically recreating the same to do object, except if the index matches, I'm flipping the completed flag to its negation. So if it's false, it becomes true. If it's true, it becomes false. So I got the toggle task function here. Now, whenever I click on this corresponding checkbox, I need to call that function. So to call that function, I'll pass toggle task as an attribute to my to-do component. Along with that, I'll also pass task index, which is the index that we retrieved from the to-dos list. Then going back to our to-do component, I'll say toggle task and the task index. And whenever I click on a checkbox, on checkbox click, just call toggle task function with the corresponding task index. So basically, we created that function in the app.js component, and we are going to call it from within the to-do component with the corresponding task index. And whenever, what's that method again? On check on value change. Yeah, it's on value change. Execute the on checkbox click. Basically, whenever checkbox click happens, the value changes. Now let me try. Okay, what's that error here? todo.js. Only be assigned a non-empty expression. What happened here? What happens if I click? I think I made some typo somewhere. Toggle task. Yeah, pretty much what I did. Let me do a quick. Yeah, I created the new state, but I didn't update the existing state. So what I should do is I should call set to-dos and assign the new to-do state. Cool. Now it should work. Also, whenever a task is completed, I need to render that strike through line. That line can be applied in my to-do component using this text style. So right now there is a completed text style which contains line through text. What I'll do is basically anything inside this packet is JavaScript project, which means I can also use arrays. So in this array, I can say is completed, use style start completed text, otherwise null. So basically, whenever the status is completed, I'll be returning style start completed text, which contains the line through. Whenever I click on the checkboxes, it now basically marks the tasks as completed. And there is also an add option, which I haven't built yet. When I click on test, it's supposed to add value, but it's pretty straightforward. I'll probably give this as exercise to you guys. People are watching this webinar. And this snack is available online, the entire app that I built. You can access it through YouTube. We'll be putting it up in the YouTube description. Finally, last but not the least, we will be running this app in our local system. So this is right now completely on the web through Expo Playground. Let me download this project. Yeah, I'll put it inside downloads. So yeah, up and running webinar is here. Now I'll open it through my terminal. Downloads, up and running webinar. And I'll open up VS Code. I opened the wrong directory. Code, not double dot, single dot. Yeah. So now I have the entire code that I used online on my local system because I basically downloaded it. Now in my package.json, I just have to add an additional script. So this is basically Node.js workflow where we define the starting scripts in package.json. So I'll add scripts. I'll add start, and the starting script is expo start. So I can say first I'll do npm install, which will install all the dependencies, basically expo React, React Native, and React Native paper. All these components are dependencies. It is installing all those dependencies now. Done. Once it is done, I'll do npm start. Now this will get expo CLI running, which is actually a nice web app, which will let me see the status of my app and options to run on Android or iOS simulator and a QR code here. With this QR code, you can actually run this app directly in your mobile phones. So all you have to do is go to Google Play Store, install the Expo client app, and use the QR code scanner to scan this QR code, and the app will be running in your Android phone. Now I already have Google Pixel 2 simulator running in my system, so I can do run on Android device or emulator, and it will immediately start running the app that we built directly in the simulator. what's happening is it is compiling the JavaScript code on the left and it's sending the code to my mobile app. On the bottom here, I can actually see the progress. I don't know if it's visible to you guys because the text is really small. Within a few moments, the app should be visible. And there it is. So this is the app that we are building online. Now it's directly available within our mobile app. And this is, so this concludes the webinar for React Native app, up and running with React Native app. So basically React Native simplified the entire mobile development process into building some few components and getting your product up and running. So yes, this is my final slide. So I am currently building a lot of cool applications with React Native, and I also exploring a lot of new technologies on React, Angular, Vue.js, Next, Gatsby, you name it. I would be really happy to discuss if you have any questions. So you can catch up to me on Twitter, Instagram, or Reddit. This is my user handle. It's common across all the social models. And yeah, I also got a message saying when finished, please wait. Cool. Sure, I'll wait. You guys take a note of my social handle. It's at Dani_Akash_. You can reach out to me if you have any interesting questions. I'll be always happy to communicate. Yes, Harun, I think you can take over from here.
Hi all, this is Harun representing GUVI. Thank you, Dani Akash, for this sharing your time and this webinar. I hope this was really helpful to everyone. Yeah.
Sure, I hope it was helpful to everyone.
Yes. So to all the participants, I am very happy that you've been here. We believe this webinar is really helpful to you, especially due to this tough times of Corona. And we have a lot more webinars coming up. So thank you once again, Dani. It's really
also, guys, stay safe. Always wash your hands and take care of your elderly, and also avoid going to places with a lot of people. Health is very important. Okay, Arun, thanks for the opportunity.